Welcome, loving selected ones. The truth will set you free. But first, it will destroy all you thought you understood. Allow it to settle for a second. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't a miscommunication, a harmless gossip, or a social blunder. No, what they did was not a mistake. It was a targeted destruction of an innocent person. This is a disturbing reality. According to Psychology Today, false charges and smear campaigns cause trauma reactions similar to physical attack. So, yeah, it's not all drama. It's emotional warfare expressed via gossip and gaslighting. They did not just assault a person. They assaulted someone who had done nothing wrong. And yet, this made them the ideal target. Why? Because some individuals do not desire justice. They want to demonstrate, ideally with pitchforks and popcorn. And let's be honest, in today's environment, being innocent is not a defense. If anything, it's a warning sign to people who live on turmoil. You did not breach a rule. You dispelled their delusion. And for that, they attempted to break you. But here's the plot twist. Nobody saw this coming. You are still standing. Louder, smarter, and sharper. And you're going to reveal everything. Let me begin. Number 1, they did not just assault you. They assaulted something they could never control. They did not assault you because you had done anything bad. They assaulted you because you refused to be controlled. That is the truth that many people overlook. This was not about your deeds. It was about your presence, how you carried yourself. You didn't shrink and didn't question your value. I didn't wait for permission to exist completely. That type of energy poses a challenge to those who are used to having control. They do not know what to do with someone. They cannot coerce, humiliate, or threaten others into silence. So they switched the script. They made you the issue. They portrayed you as the villain, the outsider, the one who must be dealt with, not because you committed damage, but because you were honest. Your power, or even your serenity, forced them to confront aspects of themselves that they did not want to face. You didn't participate in their game, so they flipped the board. Some individuals only feel strong when they have someone to look down upon. You did not offer them that gratification. You did not decrease your standards. Did not play stupid. Did not chuckle at the humor. That was not hilarious. And for that, they perceived you as stubborn, tough, and dangerous, despite the fact that you were only being yourself. This is what people don't grasp about targeted brutality. It is not always loud. It does not always come with a warning. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it begins with a joke, a subtle antagonistic insult, a cold shoulder that escalates into a full-fledged campaign. When the dust settles, you're left wondering how something as simple as being yourself became a danger. But here is the terrible, liberating reality. They came for you because they couldn't control you. That indicates you aren't weak. You are unbreakable. They couldn't take you being entirely yourself, unapologetic, and fearless. That was what terrified them. They are aware of this at their core. Number 2, you became the scapegoat for their unhealed hurts. They did not target you because of who you are. They came at you because of their unresolved issues. You were the outlet for grief they had never experienced. The truth is hurtful. People do not always heal. Some of them just transfer their pain on to the next convenient victim. You were at the wrong place at the wrong moment, with the proper vibe to make them feel vulnerable. That's when you became the scapegoat. What they did to you was not random. It was a release. Not for you. For them. They needed someone to blame. Someone to dump on. Someone to carry the emotional rubbish they've been storing for years. They selected you not because you deserved it, but because you didn't. You were too peaceful and gentle to be grounded. You did not bite. You did not equal their turmoil. That type of equilibrium sends unstable individuals spiraling. They lacked the fortitude to look inside, so they focused everything outside. Their anxieties became your defects. Their rage became your attitude. Their anxiety of being irrelevant turned into a threat. They created you the villain in a fiction they concocted to avoid confronting their own reflection. It's simpler to blame someone else for the issue than to confess you're still tormented by scars you never addressed. That's why nothing made sense. That is why you continued reliving it. attempting to find out what you did to cause it. But the truth is, you did nothing. You merely existed. You strode into the room with brightness they couldn't fake, and it struck the portions of them they'd fought so hard to conceal. They treated you cruelly, but it was not personal. It was profoundly personal to them. You were merely caught in the path of someone else's internal turmoil. And, although this does not justify what occurred, it does explain why the assault seemed so unexpected, premeditated, and full of projection. They were not seeing you. They were facing their own demons. You were the unflinching mirror. Number 3. Innocence reveals corruption. Innocence does not protect you. It may sometimes paint a larger target on your back. That is the twisted part. No one likes to realize that being decent, honest, or kind might make others dislike you even more, not because of anything you did, but because your existence draws attention to everything. They do not represent your innocence, lack of hidden goals, or refusal to play dirty. It exposes them. People dislike being exposed. When you go into a location and your vibe is pure, it disturbs others who are used to working in chaos. It's not that you're evaluating them. Rather, your presence serves as a natural mirror. And if they've been lying to themselves, manipulating others, or basing their identity on masks, that mirror becomes a danger. You did not confront them with words. You achieved it just by being genuine. That is what makes innocent individuals unsafe in poisonous surroundings. You don't even need to talk to cause a problem. That is why certain individuals have launched a secret campaign against you. They'll argue you're too much, too silent, or believe you're superior. It's not about the words. It is about their discomfort. Your character breaks their performance, and your openness undermines their script. You are undisturbed by their games, which makes them feel impotent. They want to bring you down, not because you've done anything bad, but because your integrity makes their actions more difficult to defend. Unfortunately, many individuals would rather ruin someone excellent than accept they need to improve. That is why innocence does not ensure safety. Sometimes it turns you into a magnet for resentment. The worst thing is that they'll spin it so convincingly that others believe them. They will warp your words into hubris, your limits into harshness, and your quiet into guilt. But deep down, they understand what they're doing. They realize they had no justification, and it is precisely what made you so dangerous. You did nothing to deserve it. That's what scared them the most. Number 4, they did not shatter you. They disclosed their own cracks. They attempted to shatter you, but all they accomplished was to highlight their own flaws. Every hurtful phrase, every passive hostile act, every effort to alienate you. It was not a reflection of your character. There was a spotlight on theirs. People believe that assaults always disclose the victim, but a closer look reveals much more about the perpetrator. Their response under duress and conflict, or when they are insecure, reveals all about their emotional capabilities. And for them, the ceiling was low. They required you to fall apart, so they might feel more put together. That was the only way their egos would survive. But not collapsing, without losing oneself in their pandemonium, generated a higher level of openness. You kept your ground, and the quiet was terrible. You didn't have to argue or prove anything just by standing tall. You exposed how little their character really was. People like that don't attack because they are powerful. They attack because they have already lost control of themselves, their emotions, and their self-esteem. They were unsure how to manage your existence, so they attempted to eradicate it. That was not power. That was panic. Every abuse they hurled was a confession to their own insecurities. Every false tale they spun about you reflected their fear of what others would perceive in them. The more you refused to shrink, the more agitated they got. That wasn't because you were being tough. It's because they were exposed. They never broke you. You may have bent. You may have questioned. You may have been harmed, but you did not lose yourself. Finally, it is what they will never grasp. The strength they attempted to test was neither loud or showy. It was anchored, calm, and unshakable. And now the world views them as shattered individuals who believe that destruction was easier than self-awareness. Number 5, individuals love justice until it requires them to hold their friends responsible. People make a big deal about justice until it comes too close to home. It's simple to demand responsibility when the wrongdoer is a stranger, someone easy to despise, or someone outside the group. However, when it comes to a buddy, colleague, someone they laugh with, or someone they benefit from, things get more difficult. Suddenly, the facts become fuzzy. Suddenly, quiet becomes the default. This is where the masks come off, since true justice is not selective. You cannot cry justice while turning a blind eye when the person inflicting damage is someone you care about. But this is what many people do. They remain silent. They make excuses. They do not want to become engaged. They say things like, "Well, I wasn't there, and it's not my place." Silence seems to be neutral, yet it really takes sides. Silence always protects the one with greater power. They call it neutrality, but we'll call it what it really is: cowardice. It prioritizes comfort before conscience. It's pretending not to see, since speaking out will result in losing status, disturbing the group, or receiving the same punishment as you did. So they play it safe. They remain friends with both parties. They pretend to be peacemakers while really facilitating violence. The saddest aspect is that they continue to pretend to be wonderful people. They continue to write about injustice, discuss compassion and empathy, and present themselves as ethically aware. But when their time came, when justice demanded genuine action, not just nice words, they vanished. When you're the one being attacked, you learn a lot about not just your opponents, but also the people who profess to care. You can tell who has the guts to stand up and who collapses. The second responsibility jeopardizes their social comfort. It's a tough, but enlightening lesson. Justice is not genuine if it only applies to those we dislike. Silence in the face of injustice does not render you impartial. It makes you complicit. Number 6. You were not assaulted for doing wrong. You were assaulted for not engaging in wrongdoing. You weren't assaulted because you crossed a line. You were assaulted because you refused to cross it. That is the part that hurts the most. You were penalized not for doing anything wrong, but for refusing to participate in anything. That was, you said no to gossip, no to backstabbing, no to the silent brutality that everyone else had accepted. That made you the issue. In a community where poisonous behavior is the norm, integrity becomes a danger. You didn't agree with the jokes that were too profound. You didn't laugh at things that weren't hilarious. You did not participate in the phony grins, secret pacts, or behind-the-scenes power games. Your hands remained clean, and it infuriated them, because staying good implied that they decided not to. That was what they couldn't bear. You were a living reminder that it was possible to be better, and they despised that reminder. They wanted you to stoop and slide, to break character, so they could feel better about their own decisions. But you didn't. You remained rooted. You remained. You, and your peaceful reluctance to become like them, created a mirror they couldn't stand to look at. They were not criticizing your actions. They were targeting your standards. Your presence broke their delusion. It undermined their justifications. Instead of questioning why they felt so vulnerable, they chose the simpler option. They attempted to shut you down. Attack the mirror. Shatter the reflection. Get rid of the reminder. So, no, it was not a miscommunication or a collision of egos. It was about your refusal to do damage and their refusal to develop. You didn't match their intensity. Instead of recognizing it, they attempted to drag you through the mud. But you did not go. And that reluctance, that boundary you refused to cross, that is precisely why they came for you. Number 7. Their savagery was never random. It was a rehearsal. What they did to you was not in the heat of the moment. It wasn't a mistake, a misunderstanding, or a bad decision made under pressure. No, what they did was planned and practiced. And this is what makes it so unsettling. They had time to halt and examine the reality. It's time to choose decency. And every time, they rejected it. That is not impulsive. That is strategic. That's someone looking at the fork in the road and choosing brutality, as if it owed them anything. They did not lash out once. They continued going. They continued twisting the knife, recounting the narrative in a manner that made you the villain and them the victim. They became used to doing it. People want to characterize these occurrences as accidents. They did not intend it. They were just emotional. However, no one lies by mistake. Nobody accidentally rallies others to turn against someone. That kind of conduct does not occur without effort. The way they exploited people and misrepresented facts reflected the strain. That is not spontaneous. That is performance. They analyzed how far they could go without seeming guilty. They chose their words carefully. They smirked while stabbing. And even when they were given the opportunity to retreat, rethink, and put things right, they doubled down. That is not an error. That is a choice. This is why it is so difficult to forgive. Not only was there treachery, but it was also frigid. It was avoidable. But they continued to proceed because they believed that maintaining their ego was more important than safeguarding your dignity. And they'll probably seek to alter history. So that was all drama. So they didn't realize. But you know better. You watched the effort they put into the harm, the follow-ups, the whispers, and the bogus apologies intended to save face rather than make amends. They were not out of control. They were totally invested. And that fact is much more powerful than any explosion. Number 8. You survived the most lethal weapon, character assassination. They did not just aim to harm your emotions. They attempted to obliterate your identity. Character assassination is the most dangerous weapon since it does not target your body. It seeks to enhance your reputation, credibility, and feeling of self. They did not want to quarrel with you. They intended to ensure that no one ever listened to you again. They intended to pollute the place before you ever entered. That kind of assault is gradual, deliberate, and personalized. It is done in whispers, half-truths, and worries disguised as caring. It's acting to be puzzled about who you are when they really know what they're doing. The frightening aspect is that it works not because what they say is accurate, but because most people accept what they hear first and then question it later. If they ever denied you the benefit of the doubt, they rewrote the version of you that others saw. They accomplished it with surgical accuracy. You were not just defending yourself against a falsehood. You were attempting to recuperate from the emotional consequences of being misunderstood by individuals who never gave you a chance. That is not drama. That is psychological warfare. Unlike physical wounds, this kind of assault does not scab over. It lingers. It rattles your confidence, making you question your tone, words, and even your silence. You begin to wonder whether you should shrink for safety. That's how severe the harm is. But the fact that you're still here, standing, and being yourself is powerful. That is resilience. Most people will never comprehend since the goal is more than simply surviving the onslaught. It's about not allowing it change you into someone you're not. You did not respond with the same hatred. You did not begin to become the tale they told. You remained anchored even while they attempted to bury you with falsehoods. And today your truth is louder than theirs. You're not just alive, you're unmistakable. Number 9. They relied on your quiet. You owe them your voice. They didn't expect you to speak. That's what they were relying on. They figured if they dumped enough dirt on your name, you'd keep silent while attempting to scrub it off. They believed that shame would cause you to withdraw, retreat, overthink, blame yourself, and finally fade into the background. That was the plan. Destroy your image, then let quiet do the rest. Because quiet for them meant capitulation. And let's be honest, many individuals fall into the trap. They do not speak out because they do not want to seem theatrical. They do not want to stir the pot. They believe that being silent demonstrates their superiority. But here is the reality. There is a distinction between peace and oppression. And what they did was not something you can rise above or call out. You do not owe them quiet. You do not owe them protection. You owe yourself your voice. Because your truth is more than simply therapeutic for you. They get exposure. The more you talk, the more their lives disintegrate. The gaps in their tale become bigger. The version of events they sold begins to unravel. When measured against your clarity, receipts, and lived experience. And no, you aren't being bitter. You aren't carrying a grudge. You're telling the narrative they attempted to conceal. And guess what? People should hear it. Not for drama or vengeance, but because the truth, delivered plainly and without shame, is powerful. It restores dignity. It reclaims space. It serves as a reminder to everyone watching that staying silent is not the only option for survival. You have already taken the blow. Now, take the microphone. Because now is not the time to shrink. It's time to shatter the narrative they've created about you and replace it with the one they didn't see coming. The truth was proclaimed without apologies by the very person they sought to suppress. Number 10. The loudest folks are often the most insecure. The people who yelled the loudest about you were not strong. They were afraid. That is what many people overlook. The louder the assault, the more desperate the attacker becomes. They required loudness because they lacked substance. They need statistics because they lacked truth. They needed turmoil because clarity would have revealed everything. Insecure individuals don't fight fairly. They argue loudly. They depend on commotion, drama, and attention to deflect from how ineffective their arguments are. They crank up the volume to hide the fact that they are projecting. They create mobs not because they are strong, but because they understand they cannot stand on their own. That is why there was always more than one individual involved. It needed to be a group. It needed to be a scene. Because the dread was more than simply a perception, it was about what you mirrored back to them. You didn't have to yell. You did not have to perform. That's what made them so upset. You remained cool and steady, and individuals in alignment do not need to raise their voices. They are the voice. You didn't require backup because the truth doesn't seek an audience. It simply is. And when you maintain that level of presence, individuals who are out of sync with themselves begin to fear. Because you did not respond, you were exposing. And that type of unstoppable intensity makes those who live on performance feel exposed. So they screamed. They exaggerated. They distorted every phrase and event, thinking that the chaos would drown out your calm reluctance to break. But deep inside, they knew. Their fury sprang from something other than power. It was terror. Fear of being irrelevant. Fear of being incorrect. Fear that you will see straight through them. Their loudness was never about you. It was about the inability to sit in stillness inside oneself. And you? You never had to equal the loudness. You simply have to keep being yourself. And that's just what they couldn't manage. Forgiveness is not deserved in situations when there is no responsibility. Forgiveness has been turned into something. It was never intended to be a show for other people's comfort. But let us be clear. Forgiveness is not an automatic process. It is not owing simply because time has gone or because someone wants to move on without completing the assignment. True forgiveness begins when responsibility begins. If they are unwilling to confront what they did, accept full responsibility, and repair the harm, they have not earned your forgiveness. And you're not wrong to withhold it. Healing does not imply erasing the facts or pretending that hurt did not occur. Some actions are unacceptable. Some behaviors are neither softened by empathy or justified by context. Healing entails admitting what occurred, recognizing what it was, and making the decision to protect yourself in the future. It is not about excusing them. It all comes down to making your own choices. That is when boundaries come into play, not as a form of retribution or punishment, but as a measure of self-respect. Drawing a line does not imply you are bitter. It means you eventually stop allowing others to trample on your tranquility in the name of maintaining civility. It indicates you're no longer interested in pretending no one wounded you simply to keep things looking nice on the surface. Here's the unpleasant reality. Some individuals may refer to your limits as drama. They'll claim you're keeping a grudge. That's because your unwillingness to allow them back into your life without repercussions disturbs the story. They want to think that they didn't do that much harm, and that your overreaction eating at the moment should have washed everything away. However, recovery does not come without consequences. It's a pathway. They don't get to walk with you on it if they haven't done the effort to earn that position. Forgiveness may be wonderful when it is genuine, but it is not necessary. And if someone refuses to be responsible, refuses to change, and continues to seek your grace, that is not reconciliation. They are asking you to betray yourself. You don't owe it to anybody. A number. This wasn't a drama. This included abuse, stress, and groupthink. Their first line of defense was to label the situation as dramatic. It lessens, distracts, and makes you seem unreasonable for responding to something that was quite harmful. However, what occurred was not a little disagreement. It was not an exaggerated misunderstanding. It was abuse disguised as manipulation, groupthink, and a conflict of egos. The language was not innocent. It was a strategy. They converted your misery into entertainment by categorizing it as drama. They portrayed your restrictions as overreactions. They diluted your truth so that they could remain comfortable in their jobs, whether it was the originator, facilitator, or mute witness. Worst of all, they exploited the label to suppress you. Because if it's simply drama, why are you still discussing it? Why have you not moved on? That's how they manipulate you into guilt. But let us call it what it actually was. Abuse of authority, emotional manipulation, and psychological profiling. It wasn't just a dispute. It was a planned attempt to undermine, isolate, and discredit you. They didn't just dislike you. They attempted to eliminate you. They leveraged social dynamics, constructed narratives behind closed doors, and pretended that their collective brutality was justifiable because others were applauding along. That is not drama. That is mob mentality. It also creates lasting wounds when individuals minimize abuse in order to preserve the peace or protect someone's reputation. They are not being neutral. They are allowing damage. They're delivering the idea that comfort is more important than truth, and that survival should be quiet and pleasant. But healing necessitates identifying things, and healing cannot occur if the truth is still being softened for the sake of appearances. You weren't too theatrical. You were being truthful and refused to back down. What transpired was not bitterness. It is clarity. They didn't have a spat. It was not messy. It was calculated. It was cowardly and abusive. Now is the time to call it what it has always been. Because naming the truth does not imply retribution. It is about emancipation. A number. Some folks do not want you cleared. They aim to taint you forever. Some folks do not seek closure. They do not want you to heal or go on. They want something far darker to keep you marked. Tainted. Others' eyes are permanently discolored. Because if you are seen as broken or problematic, it is simpler for them to explain their behavior and put you in a lesser position. It's a strategy to dominate the narrative and maintain influence over you long after the original assault. This is not about justice or settlement. It never was. It is about preserving a hierarchy in which they sit above you, unaffected by responsibility or advancement. They don't want to confront their own weaknesses or change since it would imply admitting weakness. Instead, they grasp onto your perceived weaknesses and amplify them, utilizing them as tools to keep you trapped. They aren't interested in reconciliation or the truth. They want to maintain supremacy by keeping you under their shadow, so they never have to examine themselves in the light. This kind of brutality is not just selfish. It is a frantic effort to protect their fragile egos at your cost. But here's the truth. They're afraid that their judgment will not determine your value. They attempted to stain. You are merely revealing their fear. Fear that you will climb above and expand beyond their grasp. That their control over you is an illusion. They cling to your demise because it is the only way they feel secure. So, when they try to keep you soiled, realize that it is their insecurity speaking, not your truth. You are not the issue. They refuse to change. And no amount of attempting to bring you down will prevent you from finally towering higher than they ever thought. A number. The apology you deserve may never arrive, and neither will their peace. Even if you deserve an apology, it may never come. Some individuals lack the guts or empathy to confront the harm they have caused and speak the words that may start to set things right. But here is the irony. While they may escape responsibility and making apologies, the component they urgently need will also elude them. They sought to offload the weight on you. It does not vanish. It festers. What they did to you is not something you easily forget. It resonates throughout your life, molding your experiences and causing you to develop in ways you never imagined. However, as you go ahead, recover, and reclaim your narrative, they are left behind. They are haunted by their decisions. They uttered falsehoods and the truth. They buried their conscience. I will not let them rest comfortable. Even as the throng disperses and the noise subsides, their inward restlessness remains. They could seem to be all right on the outside, laugh with others, or hide their remorse behind reasons. But within, there's a nagging voice, a shadow of remorse that they strive to dismiss. It's an echo of the person they've wounded. They are unable to remove the fact. The truth was denied. No matter how hard they try, the echo persists. Meanwhile, you are not caught in that loop. You have the ability to heal, rebuild, and reinvent yourself on your own terms. You bear your truth without shame. The quiet you may have been pushed into is now your power. They may never offer you closure, but your peace is yours to keep. So, as they struggle with this, spirits remember that healing is your triumph. And sometimes the most powerful justice is seeing people who have wronged you struggle to find their own peace. What they did to you was more than just an assault. It was an effort to change your tale, darken your light, and imprison your soul. However, in that endeavor, they disclosed much more about themselves than you. The savagery, despair, and cowardice. Everything is now starkly revealed in the harsh light of reality. You survived not because you were weak or mute, but because you refused to be destroyed by falsehoods, rumors, or treachery. Your survival is a monument to your courage, integrity, and unshakable unwillingness to allow their evil determine your future. Remember that this healing is not a silent resignation, but rather a vigorous reclaiming of your voice and identity. It is an unwillingness to allow others' failures shape how you view yourself. Setting limits is about respecting your own value, not being spiteful. Forgiveness is not due when there is no responsibility, and peace is not provided to those who have never attempted to make apologies. Your next steps are entirely up to you, shaped by your ability to confront suffering without losing yourself. With each fact you utter, the story they attempted to impose on you crumbles piece by piece. Every step you take toward your own light, the volume of their falsehoods just emphasizes their uneasiness. The crowds they formed merely demonstrate their fear of your power. And, although the apology you deserve may never arrive, your healing will outlive their regrets and hauntings. You are not simply surviving. You are ascending. Turning scars become insight. Silence transforms into insight, and anguish becomes strength. This is not the end of your tale. It's a tipping moment. A cry to regain what has been taken. Your dignity, peace, and the truth. Hold your head high, because those who harmed you expected your quiet instead. You have decided to shout. The stronger your voice, the clearer your truth, the more difficult it gets for their lives to endure. You are not responsible for the harm you have suffered. You are the eternal light, and that, above all, is the most significant win. If you found this message meaningful, please share it with others. Hit the subscribe button to join our community, where truth and strength come first. Like the video to show your support, share it to raise awareness, and leave a comment to tell us about your experience or ideas. Your voice is important here, and together we can build a place where healing, honesty, and empowerment flourish. Let us continue this discourse because no one should endure injustice alone. Stay blessed.